everyone, one all present here. So, welcome on behalf of Sri Saram Institute of Technology, Department of Mechanical Engineering, for this fourth day STTP program. And a special welcome to Dr. Jayakrishna sir for accepting our invitation and is joining here to deliver his presentation. Welcome to you, sir. Department of Mechanical Engineering, Telangana, has did this BTech program in mechanical
Sir,
engineering.
voice not clear, sir. Brothers.
Okay, sir. Now it is clear, sir. Is it audible? Audible?
Yeah, yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, is it audible now?
Yeah, yes.
Sir, voice is. Yes. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so Dr. Jayakrishna sir has completed his BTech program in mechanical engineering from Nagarjuna University. He did his master's in energy engineering from Department of Mechanical Engineering, PSG College and University, and he has completed his doctoral program in heat transfer from IIT Madras. So the different positions he has held during his service are a lead CFD engineer at General Motors Technical Center, Bangalore University, Qatar, Hyderabad campus, a visiting professor, Sustainable Energy Research Laboratory at Texas A&M University, Qatar, and currently Sir is the associate professor at National Institute of Technology, Warangal. His research interests include utilization of solar energy, CFD, phase change materials, thermal energy storage, heat transfer in porous media, and thermal management of electronic components. He has guided more than 15 UG and PG projects, and he is a life member of Indian Society of Heat and Mass Transfer and a member of Institution of Engineers India. So he are more than 75 in national and international journals. He has guided 7 PhD scholars. So, sir, am I audible? Is it clear?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Understood. Okay. He has organized different workshops and conferences and has delivered invited talks at BITS Pilani Hyderabad campus, NIT Warangal, Telangana Academy of Sciences, and many other reputed institutions. He has been a chairperson and co-chairperson for many international conferences held at NIT as well as BITS Pilani. So his research projects worth rupees 40 lakhs has been completed so far from different government organizations. The awards and honors he has received so far is he has secured first prize in visualization development competition at Texas University, Qatar, third prize in poster competition at Texas University, Qatar, and sponsored by IITM and IIT Mana to present oral and poster technical papers at Texas University, USA. Scholarship granted from MHRD, Government of India, for pursuing ME and PhD. He has been an active reviewer of Applied Energy Elsevier, Applied Thermal Engineering Elsevier, IEI Series Springer, Journal of Solar Energy Engineering ASME, Thermal Science and Engineering Elsevier, Periodic of Polytechnic and Mechanical Engineering, and Heat Mass Transfer Springer. So we are happy and privileged to have you, sir. I kindly request you to take over the session. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, now I'll be sharing my presentation.
Okay, sir.
Sir, please let me know, are my slides
Yeah, yes,
visible
sir.
to you?
Yes,
And
sir.
is my voice clear, or like
Yeah.
is there any interruption in between?
Okay, sir. Now it is okay, sir.
My voice is clear now, sir?
Yeah, voice is clear. Screen also visible, sir. No issue, sir.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll be starting now, sir.
Thank you.
Mm. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this AICTE sponsored 60-day short-term program, which is conducted by Sri Sairam Institute of Technology, Chennai. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank Dr. Shanmuga Sundar and the management of Sri Sai Institute of Technology for giving me this opportunity. So, as it is mentioned, I'm Dr. Jay Krishna, working as an associate professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, NIT Warangal. So, I'll be giving a talk on latent heat storage materials, fundamentals, applications, and compatibility issues. So, on the left side of your screen, you can see there is a candle, and there is some spherical ball in which partially it seems like solid and it is liquid. So it is in line to this particular topic. These two are can be coined as latent heat storage materials. So you can observe here that when you light a candle, this wax takes the heat and it gets melted, and the melted portion, because of gravity, it will come down. And when this liquid wax is exposed to the lower temperature conditions, that means the ambient conditions, which should be less than that of melting point, then it will start solidifying. Actually, this is also one latent heat storage material. And the topic is very much important, and it is very much necessary, which is by which we can reduce this greenhouse gas emissions. On your right side of your screen, you can see, especially the right half of this particular picture, whatever I am pointing, it is totally dried off, and this is one of the consequences that we get because of the greenhouse gas emissions. And because of the global warming, which is due to greenhouse gas emissions, the ice at the poles are getting melted, and the land is also getting eroded. And you can see here this bear is looking for land for its survival. So this particular topic is of great importance, and it is very much related to our global warming issues, like how we can avoid this thing by understanding these topics. This is how this presentation will be focused on. So the organization of my today's presentation is in this way. Initially, we'll be going through the introduction part. Then out of various renewable energy sources, I'll be dealing with why only solar. Then in order to effectively store this solar energy, I'll be briefly discussing first about why you need to store this energy, what is necessary for it. So in context to that, I'll be explaining about thermal energy storage. And among various thermal energy storage systems, I'll be considering why it is necessary for us to go for latent heat storage materials. And once I just briefly explain about latent heat storage materials, I'll be again going for classification. What are the various types of thermal and latent heat storage materials we have, and how to select this. Next, I'll be going through different applications. Next, three major problems that we have in latent heat storage materials, I'll be giving an outline. There is compatibility issues, phase segregation, and thermal reliability issues. I'll just explain during that particular time, what do you mean by these terms and why it is important for us to study. And once it is done, I'll be briefly taking you through the compatibility issues of metals with the latent heat storage materials. As I could understand, one of the topic is dedicated to this particular details. So I'll be briefly going through you, and I'll try to show you few aspects of it, like how to proceed and so on. And finally, I'll be concluding my presentation by giving some conclusions and important points that we had discussed, and what are the various points that are necessary to go through. I'll be briefing it out during the conclusions part. So coming to this introduction part, why it is necessary for us to go for renewable energy sources. Obviously, when the radiation that is coming from the sun will be passing through this atmosphere, and it reaches the Earth's surface. This we have been studying right from our childhood. So what happens is, any physical nature of any body will be in such a way, it absorbs the solar radiation, and once it absorbs, it starts re-radiating back. So whatever radiation that is coming from the sun will be of lower wavelength radiation, and it passes through this atmosphere. And once it starts, Earth starts absorbing, it starts radiating, this wavelength will be of larger wavelength. So what happens is when the greenhouse gases, which are already present in our atmosphere, this will not allow these gases to move out into the space. So that is one reason what we can observe is, if you briefly see, cloudy nights are much more warmer when compared to that of clear sky days. So, and these greenhouse gases, when this thickness of this layer, gas layers increases, what happens is this becomes much more opaque to this longer wavelength radiation. And this leads to the increase in average temperature of the Earth. And when the average temperature of the Earth is increasing, it is going to cause several consequences, like the ice over the poles melts, and the sea level rises, and another thing is that the lands gets eroded, and there will be a scarcity of land, food, and already these consequences we are seeing now, even in Chennai, Mumbai, or even recently in Telangana also. If rain comes, it is coming like a flood. Like there is a huge water which gets accumulated into our domain, and as we are not giving proper passage to go to these lakes or even oceans, what happens is like it is causing severe consequences. So like the question is like, are these greenhouse gases present before itself, or it has come only because of the pollutants that we are actually releasing? The answer for this is yes. These greenhouse gases are present before we started polluting, or before we started emitting the CO2 emissions or various greenhouse gases. Previously, like our Earth's atmosphere constitutes something like 1% of these greenhouse gases. So what happens is, if these greenhouse gases are not at all there, our Earth will be 30 degrees lower, temperature will be lower than what we are having now, which will be too cold to survive. So actually our Earth is like perfectly balanced, such a way we are having like very comfort conditions for us to stay. But what we are doing is we are polluting a lot, and we are not caring about the environment. And because of which, one such example is like dumping a lot of CO2 into our environment, and which is leading to all these consequences. So that is one point. Another point is, what are the various greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases are like water vapor, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, methane. But when we are saying about like global warming, we generally speak about like CO2, CO2, CO2. So why only CO2? But we do have like so many greenhouse gases also which are present. But the main problem here is CO2 contributes something nearly like 60% of the various pollutants that we have, like especially greenhouse gases. That is why the major culprit that because of which we are having these consequences is nothing but CO2. That is why when we say about like global warming, greenhouse effect, and everything, the first thing that comes into our mind is CO2. This is the main reason. Why? Because it is contributing nearly like 60%. So like, is it like the reason is CO2 the reason for the increase in average Earth's temperature? So that was the question. Generally, Earth has a tendency of heating itself, and later it will be getting cooled. But several studies were conducted to understand, is it because of CO2, or is it the nature of the Earth itself? So researchers have taken CO2 samples right from like 1880, and they tried to project CO2 emissions with that of like temperature. What they have observed is that with the increasing ppm level of the CO2, the average temperature of the Earth also proportionally got increased. So this is one evidence because by which we can say that CO2 is leading to the increasing average temperature of the Earth. So now we do have several renewable energy sources like solar, wind, biomass, and geothermal, and so many options we have. Like let us see like why solar is like so promising, and is it necessary to go for it or not? So actually the annual solar energy reaching the Earth's surface is around 1.5 to 10 power 18 kilowatt hours, while the annual worldwide energy consumption based upon the data which is taken by 1997 is around like 1.5 to 10 power 14 kilowatt hours, because like I could not get a suitable reference, reliable reference, so I am restricting to this particular data. So which constitutes something like 1% of the incoming radiation, solar radiation, of what we have like Earth's energy demand. Due to the reflection and absorption of the atmosphere, the radiation density on the Earth's surface is of the order 1 kilowatt per meter square under ideal conditions. On an average basis, I am saying. So this is what it will be following on the Earth. So now, if you just check the radiation map for the world, like what we can observe is like certain parts, like the radiation is very high, and certain parts you do have like a moderate solar radiation, and certain parts it is in very light form. So like this is one thing that we need to infer from this, and certain portions like it is good enough, like the solar radiation that we have in terms of kilowatt per meter square is relatively high. If you just observe from Indian context, India is blessed with solar radiation, good amount of solar radiation. So from Indian context, if you see, especially South India, if you observe, majority of the portion has like a good amount of solar radiation. If you are able to effectively tap this solar radiation to the maximum possible extent, if you start utilizing these renewable energy sources, we can reduce this CO2 emissions or this global warming effects. So if you just take from statistics point of view, installed power capacity from Indian context is around 35.6 gigawatt approximately by the end of 2019, which contributes something like 9.6% of the total installed power capacity from solar energy point of view. So like still there is a lot of scope for us, by which like we need to start exploring how to use this solar energy in different forms. If it can be done, like so our issues related to global warming and other consequences that we face because of the pollutants can be minimized. So okay, so far so good. Like what happens is, however, solar radiation actually brings like then why the problem is like why we are it is so promising, we do have like a plenty of solar radiation, then why we are not able to utilize this energy? Because this solar energy comes with three fundamental disadvantages. One is like the power density of solar radiation reaching the Earth's surface is relatively low. Then the another thing is the instant solar radiation underlies a temporal variation. Temporal variation means there is a variation even if you take in a given day, right from morning to evening, the radiation gets varied. And even like seasonal variations are there, and even if you have a passing clouds, there will be a variation. So you cannot totally rely on this particular solar radiation if you are designing some system which is totally depending upon the radiation that is instant. So this is one more difficulty, the second difficulty we have. And the third one is like solar radiation is unequally distributed over the Earth's surface. Like just we have seen the world map. In some places, solar radiation is good, and in some places, like this radiation is very less. The intensity of solar radiation that is instant on any surface is relatively low in some places. So these are the three main fundamental disadvantages that we come across when we are utilizing the solar energy. So now how we can overcome these disadvantages? The first one can be overcome by concentrating the solar radiation reaching the Earth's surface. That means you make use of some collector, and if you want to have relatively high temperatures, then concentrate this solar radiation and you can attain relatively high temperatures. That is one. And now another one is like conversion and storage of solar energy, because it is intermittent in nature. That means there are temporal variations. That means like it is not uniform throughout, and it is totally unpredictable. Sometimes like even if you see these days, like it is not shiny, and we do have like passing clouds, and it will be on and off and so on. So definitely to overcome this difficulty, we need to have like a conversion and storage systems by which we can effectively use this solar energy. Another thing is like a transportation of energy to the regions with high energy demand. That means wherever you have like that particular area is blessed with solar radiation, you utilize this solar radiation and convert that into some transportation fuels like hydrogen and so on. So, and transport these fuels like wherever the solar energy is not available. So whatever difficulties or disadvantages that we have seen on the top three, we do have solutions. So if you can start working on these disadvantages, obviously solar energy becomes one of the most promising options to overcome these global warming issues. So assuming a mean annual solar radiation of 1700 kilowatt per meter square and consider the collector efficiency of 5%. Actually, collector efficiency of 5% is relatively low. We need some total collecting concentrating area of around 1100 by 1100 kilometers square. If you just compare to the total area that is available, it contributes something like 2.4% of the Earth's total surface area. And if you overcome this, consider only land alone, it comes to be around 8.1% of the Earth's surface area covered with land. So we do have a very good option of utilizing this solar energy, provided if we are able to overcome these disadvantages. So, and obviously, like finally, it will help us in overcome the issue of like greenhouse gas emissions and so on. Okay, so then the question comes like how to use this solar energy, like how to utilize this solar energy. See, like from solar energy, we can directly get electrical energy, or we can get the thermal energy. So generally, like solar electric or solar thermal, which is actually the utilization of solar energy can be broadly classified into two things. Solar electric. Solar electric in the sense means you do have like a photovoltaic panel, and directly you expose it to this solar radiation, and what happens is we will get electricity. Obviously, we will make use of like batteries, like energy storage systems, and obviously to convert AC to DC. And what happens is you can utilize this directly in this particular form. Another form is that is solar thermal. Solar thermal is like you can have non-concentrating type, you can have like a concentrating type. Generally, it can be applied for. It can be like depending upon the temperature range, we can make use of different solar thermal collectors. So you can use for space or water heating, or if you are able to concentrate the solar radiation and attain relatively high temperatures, that can be even used for power generation and so on. The below figure in your slide, which provides that there are parabolic troughs by which the solar radiation is concentrated, and you have like a steam generator and several heat exchanger. Obviously, because it is not reliable and there is a temporal variation also, you need to have like auxiliary heating system. By connecting this particular heat and to the by means of a Rankine cycle, you can get power out of it. So you can broadly classify into solar thermal and solar electric. Okay, in this way actually we can utilize this solar energy. So now the second one is like conversion and storage of the solar energy. The point is like as we discussed before, it is intermittent in nature. That means morning you have required amount of sunshine, but during night time, even in the morning situation also, sometimes it is available, sometimes it is not available, and so on. So definitely we need to have like some storage system. So here we are making use of, this is a photovoltaic panel. So what happens is during the daytime, when we have like sufficient solar radiation, you tap the electricity and you store in terms of batteries and retrieve it back whenever you are in need of it. And this is nothing but thermal energy storage, the second part, because previously I classified the utilization of solar energy in terms of solar electric and solar thermal. In this inline to the, like if you are using for battery in the case of solar electric, in the case of solar thermal, you need to make use of or have this in terms of thermal battery. Thermal battery means thermal energy storage system. So this is one example where you can have either sensible heat storage material or latent heat storage material here. And during daytime, when you have like a surplus energy or sufficient amount of solar radiation, you store the heat in terms of container and utilize it whenever you are in need of. Another thing, in line to that of solar thermal energy storage, you do have like a thermochemical energy storage also. Here what happens is the dissociation of molecules takes place. Generally, if you take ammonia and like when it is an endothermic reaction, it splits to nitrogen and hydrogen. So when we are actually mixed again, it becomes like an exothermic, which releases a lot of heat. You tap this heat and again couple that thing to your Rankine cycle and get power out of it. These two things, whatever I pointed or shown towards the right hand side of my slide, this comes under solar thermal energy storage. And the left hand side is nothing but by making use of a battery. Directly you can have the solar PV panel and store the electrical energy in terms of like a battery. So another thing is like a transportation of energy. So as we can see before, we did see like in some places it is available, in some places it is not available. There is something called steam reforming. Steam reforming is a general process. What we do here is we make use of the water, steam as well as methane, and we produce hydrogen. This is one thing. And another thing is like there is one more technology called the methane cracking process, where what happens is when the methane is connected. So what happens is when you have this methane and it is exposed to sunlight, in terms of like sunlight here, it splits to carbon, which is in solid form, and you have like hydrogen, which is in gaseous form. So what happens is like this is another way. This steam reforming is one place where you do have like you need to combine hydrogen, water as well as methane, and you do have like a little bit of carbon dioxide, which will be liberating out. But this is one advanced process which we call that thing as the methane cracking process, where there is no emissions of CO2. So you have like carbon, which is in solid form, and hydrogen, which is in gaseous form. And these days, like fuel cell is it has become much more popular, where we fed hydrogen as our fuel, and we will be feeding oxygen at the cathode side, and the byproduct is nothing but like water, as well as it leads to like electrons and little bit of heat. So this has like a fuel cell has a thermodynamic efficiency of nearly 80%. So this is in this way what we can do is by making use of techniques like steam reforming and some methane cracking process, we make use of the sunlight and utilize this sunlight for the generation of hydrogen. And you store this hydrogen in terms of cylinders and transport this hydrogen to at different locations where there is no availability of sunlight. In this way, what we can do is we can utilize or transport the energy or sunlight by converting to different forms. This is one way of doing. In the same line, actually, you do have like different methods by which you can transport the energy. Okay, now the question is why only thermal energy? Why not something else? If you just take our industrial energy consumption and try to draw in terms of a pie chart, 74% of the industrial energy consumption will be from the various process heat. That means like we do have several equipments where we need only thermal energy, and nearly 26% is only like we will make use of this electrical energy. And if you just see like the split according to its temperature range, 16% will be from 100 to 400 degrees centigrade, and high temperature is only 36%. And one more thing is that like if you take the low temperature heat, which is around 30 to 100 degrees centigrade, it is around 22%. Why I have projected this? Because there should be some approach depending upon the temperature range and the application also. What happens is we need to appropriately go for the selection of the thermal energy storage. In this particular lecture, I'll be taking this particular part, low temperature heat storage application regime, which is around 30 to 100 degrees centigrade. Okay. So now we have actually come to our topic, latent heat storage material. The point is, what is latent heat storage material? Latent heat storage material uses a phase change material as a storage medium. That is, energy is absorbed or released during the change of phase. So, for example, if you take, let me give an example of like candle itself, okay, paraffin wax. So, what is happening is initially it is there in room temperature, which is in solid state. Now, I start supplying some heat. What is going to happen is there will be a sensible heat. Let us assume that paraffin wax, the melting point is around like approximately 44 degrees centigrade, approximately. I'm saying like depending upon the number of carbon atoms, this melting point also gets varied. So up to this room temperature, let us take room temperature of 28 degrees centigrade. Okay, from room temperature to around 44 degrees centigrade, there will be a sensible heat that is taking place, MCP delta T. Once it attains nearly 44 degrees centigrade, the phase change takes place. That means from solid, it is going to go to a vapor phase. And again, once it completes that 44 degrees centigrade, there will be a sensible heat. So here MCP delta T, and here it is M into N. This is the latent heat, and again this is going to be a sensible heat. So now what is going to happen is, if you want to retrieve the heat back, what happens? You now start cooling this particular system. So there will be a sensible heat which is given, and latent heat, and again there will be a sensible heat. Again, it can come to its room temperature also. So generally what happens is, during the latent heat storage material, the phase change takes place. When you transfer heat to heat, the heat, or once you reaches the appropriate melting point temperature. The right side of your figure gives the will give like solidification process. Here it is melting, just like in the first slide itself I did show about like a candle which is melting, and it is converting to wax, is getting liquefied, and it is coming down and it is getting solidified. But this is this particular process is here, if you can observe, it is getting crystallized, because outside temperature is low and inside it is at high temperature. It will be getting solidified. So what happens is, once you go in this particular direction, it will be converting from solid to liquid, and once you retrieve back, it will be converting. That means you send some cold water and try to retrieve the heat back. It's sometimes initially, like mostly, it will be crystallizing first, and then it starts solidifying, and it takes this particular path. So, but in short, in a nutshell, latent heat storage material is one like which stores or releases heat during the phase change process. So, like the question is, now you do have like sensible heat storage materials and latent heat storage materials. Why do you need to go for like latent heat storage materials? That question comes to comes to our mind. Then generally, if you just observe latent heat storage materials, the energy storage density is very high when compared to sensible heat storage materials. Usually, latent heat storage materials take 5 to 14 times less volume when compared to sensible heat storage materials. This is one reason why we are going for latent heat storage materials for the storing of thermal energy. And now, like, so what? Like, if you have like and high energy density, what is going to happen? So our system becomes, thermal energy storage systems becomes much more very compact, and the overall space that is occupied also will be very less. So, and one more advantage is, importantly, is that there is a small temperature range change when it is changing its space from solid to liquid. So this is another reason. One is that the volume that is occupied by this is 5 to 14 times less when compared to sensible heat storage materials. And the phase change process takes place at nearly constant temperatures. Because of these two advantages, what we do is like if you are opting like if you are going for a latent heat storage materials, so these promising advantages will be having when compared to any sensible heat storage materials. So just to have like comparison, if you take like rock and water as like these are sensible heat storage materials. And phase change materials, obviously I'll be giving in my next slide what are the various types of phase change materials. In the field, just observe like the storage mass, if you want to store 10 power 6 kilojoules of like energy per kg, okay, it takes something like 67,000 of like kgs of mass, but for water it is around 16,000. But if you observe like phase change materials, which is organic PCM, if you consider, it is only around 5,300 and it is around 4,350 kgs. And if you take from volume point of view, if you want to store 10 power 6 kilojoules of energy, its volume is around 30 and 16. But if you just see phase change materials, it is only 6.6 and only 2.7. It is nearly, let us take varying from 5 and so on, which means that by using latent heat storage materials, our system can be very, very compact. So that is the reason why we are going for this latent heat storage materials, is because of this. Our system becomes very, very compact, and we do have like high energy storage density, and as the phase change process takes place at nearly constant temperature, it is very much suitable for a given application. Now, from the selection point of view, phase change materials can be broadly classified as gas liquid PCM, solid gas PCM, solid liquid PCM, and solid PCM. So first I will explain what I mean by solid-solid PCM. Generally, you might be wondering, solid-solid I'm saying, and both are in the same phase. But here what happens is when you take a solid-solid PCM, once you supply heat, the compound changes its crystalline structure from one form to another form. So only thing here what happens is when you start giving the heat, it changes from one crystalline structure to the other crystalline structure. If you want to retrieve the heat back, it again regains its original crystalline structure. But what happens is the latent heat is relatively less when compared to other things. So in this particular course or lecture, we are not considering solid liquid PCMs because it does have like other difficulties like low thermal conductivity and relatively low latent heat and so on. Let us see like gas liquid PCM and solid gas and solid liquid. So gas liquid, or let us take water. Water, once you are actually supplying some heat, it is going to be a vapor. And in the same way, let us take like dry ice, solid CO2, camphor, naphthalene. What happens is by sublimation process, what happens is directly it will be going from solid to gas. Here, what happens is if you have like a phase change, other phase to be in vapor phase, this is not at all suitable. Why? Because when it is converting from one phase to the gaseous phase, the amount of volume that you need is very, very high. And another issue is that in order to retrieve the heat back, you need to do some external work. In spite of high latent heats, especially for gas liquid and solid gas PCMs when compared to solid liquid PCMs, you generally don't prefer gas liquid PCM and solid gas PCM. What we prefer is solid liquid PCM. Now, among the solid liquid PCM, you can classify again in terms of organic, inorganic, and eutectics. So, like generally, organic PCMs we consider for low temperature heat storage applications, preferably less than 100 degrees or so. You can broadly classify into paraffins, fatty acids, esters, alcohols. In the case of inorganic PCMs, generally high temperature thermal energy storage, what we can do is we can go for like inorganic PCMs. So examples are like for inorganic PCMs are salts, metallic compounds, salt hydrates, and metal alloys. So each one has its own advantages and disadvantages. And what do you mean by eutectics? Eutectics is a combination of one organic PCM plus another organic PCM. Okay. Or it can be a combination of one inorganic PCM and another inorganic PCM. Or it can be a combination of organic PCM and inorganic PCM. Eutectics is nothing but a combination of two different PCMs. This combination can be organic, it can be inorganic, or it can be organic and inorganic PCM. So it can be of anything. So when you have a blend of two different PCMs, you generally name it as like a eutectic PCM. Okay. So eutectics, obviously, you have like again three. So now, like as I mentioned, organic PCMs, inorganic PCM, and eutectic PCMs have their own advantages and disadvantages. Let us see from what are the advantages we have. Generally, organic PCMs are available in a large temperature range. Okay, and it is like it has a good compatibility with metals. That means the corrosion aspects relatively to that of like inorganic PCM, and it is in general chemically stable, relatively high latent heat, and it's safe and non-reactive, and it is recyclable. And from demerits point of view, one of the drawbacks that you have with PCMs are like low thermal conductivity. Relatively, when compared to that of like inorganic PCM, organic PCMs has low thermal conductivity. And when compared to inorganic, the volumetric latent heat capacity is low. And it is some of the PCMs are highly flammable, and this is relatively costly when compared to inorganic PCMs. Inorganic PCMs are a little bit cheap. That is why this one of the advantages, like it has like easily available and cost is low, and it has like sharp melting point, high thermal conductivity. High means like it is not like significant difference, relatively high when compared to that of organic PCM. Generally, the thermal conductivity of PCMs is less than 1 watt per meter Kelvin. This is one of the drawback with PCMs. High latent heat of fusion, and another thing is it's a low volume change and it is non-flammable. And there are issues like supercooling, corrosion, nucleating agents are needed. What do you mean by supercooling and what do you mean by corrosion? I'll be explaining you in the coming slides actually. Okay, Eutictics. Eutictics, because you are combining two different PCMs, Eutictics should have generally sharp melting point. As depending upon the promising aspects of each PCM, as we are selecting, generally volumetric storage density should be high. That is why we are keeping it as a merits point under merits. Only limited data is available on thermophysical properties, as the use of these materials are very new to thermal energy storage system. So what happens is, like, a lot of work is still need to be done, especially when reading from aspects related or understanding from Eutictics point of view. Because Eutictics means you can have any combination of organic, inorganic, and so on. So that is why there is a still lot of scope for us to work on, especially on Eutictic PCMs. So then the question is, okay, I have like, if you just check literature, you have hundreds of like phase change materials, even for low temperature range or high temperature range and so on. So the question is, how should I select a PCM? First and most important thing, the PCM should be selected based upon the melting temperature range. For example, I have an application of solar water heating system. The average temperature of solar water heating system varies from 40 to 80 degrees centigrade. I'm just mentioning about average temperature. So, but because in peak summer also, even it can go to 95, or sometimes even in solar flat plate collector itself, water may start boiling. So, but whatever I'm saying is like average temperature. So whatever PCM that we are selecting should be in this application range. So the melting point of the PCM should be in this range. This is the most important criteria for the selection of a PCM. Next, obviously, next most important thing is it should have high latent heat. So among various PCMs that are available, one is that melting point is first important point. Another thing is that among the various PCMs, it should have high latent heat. Next comes the all other things, like small volume changes on phase transformation, and it should be having like a congruent melting, and it should have relatively high thermal conductivity. Long term, it should be like a chemically stable, completely reversible, and it should not be toxic, it should not be flammable and non-explosive. It should not get degraded with the number of cycles or like with time, and it should be compatible with the metals or the surfaces that we generally have, because these phase change materials should be kept in a container. So it should be compatible with that. And another important aspect, if you have all these advantages, but if it is like highly expensive and is not available, it is of no use. So it should be easily available, and the cost should be as minimum as possible. So if you are selecting a PCM, it is very much necessary to consider all these aspects. So if you ask me, like, out of these things, which are most important is melting point and high latent heat. Based upon this, we will go for like initial selection. Once we have this thing, we will even go for the other selection also. Like other aspects are also equally important, but importantly, we generally take these two things. So let us see like a few examples of like phase change materials and how it is being used. I'll start with like with solar water flat plate collector or solar water heating system, which most of us are aware of. Generally, as I told, the average temperature may vary from around 30 to 80 degrees centigrade. Okay, here this is a flat plate collector. When solar radiation is instant on this particular, the temperature of the water which is passed through the laser tubes increases, and because of buoyancy, it will be going up and it will be storing in the insulation tank here. Now, what happens is usually because of the buoyancy, this fluid will be going through. So people did try with different approaches. I tried to give only like a very few. One thing is that you do have like a regular solar flat plate collector, and instead of having the storage system, you have like a latent heat storage system. Okay. So first, what you do is, whenever during daytime, when we have like a sufficient sunlight and you are in need of the power, directly you bypass this and utilize it to storage tank. In case when you have like a surplus power and surplus energy, and you are not using this hot water also, you please divert to that solar thermal energy storage system, like a thermal energy storage system, and you send the hot water, where this latent heat storage material takes the heat. And what happens is, again, it stores the heat. When you are actually during night time, when we are in need of this particular hot water, what you can do is you can close this particular valve and circulate through this water, by which actually we can have this hot water for relatively longer duration. And this is one, and people did do like modification from the collector point of view itself. So in the collector itself, as you can see here, there are like riser tubes and runner tubes. So what happened is, in the annulus of this particular tubes also, people researchers tried to keep this latent heat storage, PCM, phase-in material. And below this absorber tube also, they tried to place this PCM. So actually this kind of process is called like encapsulation. Encapsulation in the sense means like you have like some container. In this container, what you do is totally fill this PCM inside. So now what is going to happen during daytime when the solar radiation is hitting this particular surface, when you have like a surplus amount of heat, when the temperatures are high or so, because the PCM are placed just below the absorber plate, this PCM melts and it will be converting to liquid state. Now during night time, when you send this cold water through these tubes, because this is in liquid state at relatively higher temperatures, the heat will be going from the PCM to that of liquid, and we get hot water. This is one particular design that we can see. I tried to take these designs from this particular reference. Like this, you can see a lot different designs, especially modifications done to the collector or modifications that are done to this thermal storage tank itself. Like there are several designs that are available. Another such design is like PCM, which is placed just below the absorber plate. Here, what it is done is there are like tubes through which water is circulated. And because the generally PCM thermal conductivity is low, they generally had these protrusions or kind of fins kind of arrangement, where there is an effective heat dissipation. And during daytime, when you have like a sufficient amount of thermal energy, this PCM melts and it will be in the liquid state. And during night time, when you are in need of like hot water, what it can be done is you can send this cold water through the tubes, and the heat can be extracted from the PCM to this cold water, and you can have hot water like throughout 24/7. So in this way, actually what we can do is like a PCM can help to maintain or we can to meet our requirement. That means having hot water 24/7, and along with that we can make our system also like very compact. This I would like to say this PCM can be placed in some container by two means. One, we call that thing as a macro encapsulation. Macro encapsulation means this is one macro encapsulation. You can see like spherical balls, and to this spherical balls, like inside this whatever I am just highlighting, this is totally PCM. So these balls will be filled with the PCM inside, and it is placed in the storage tank like this. So what is going to happen is, this is one such example, whatever I am just mentioning. So during daytime, when you have like a supply of hot water through this particular collector, this hot water is sent through this, and the outside capsules are generally made of like metals, and usually this PCM which is there inside, once it attains its melting point temperature, it melts and it converts to a liquid phase. And actually you supply like this. During night time, what we do is, when we don't have this required sunshine, this cold water is made to pass through this. So the hot water, once we are sending through this particular storage tank, we call that thing as a charging process. And discharging process, what we do is we send the cold water and we will try to retrieve the heat back and maintain required temperature inside the room. Or it can be for space heating, or it can be for water heating. This is one such design. And there are in line to this, we do have like a different designs that are available. Whatever this highlight portion is nothing but a PCM. This is the PCM, and water can be circulated in this particular manner. This is one design. This is another design that can be done. Or people did try, several researchers tried different options and tried to see which one is efficient or which one is performing well. So another option is that here inside the cylinder is like a shell and tube. Inside the tube itself, you have like a PCM, and outside this cold water or hot water is initially circulated. And once you want to retrieve it, but cold water is fed again in this particular direction, and you will take the heat back from this PCM. And there is one more design where you have multiple channels, and in between the gap, between the tubes and the shell, it is totally filled with the PCM, and people tried like different designs also. This experimental setup we have in my lab. So what happens is this is a shell and tube heat exchanger. This is a tube in which like water is being hot water is circulated. I tried to show like the melting process here. Here, just whatever you are seeing here, right? This refers to this. Okay. So as I sent some hot water with respect to time, you can observe like it is getting melted, and it is like here you can observe it is a liquid PCM. And in the same manner, I did try with different like fins with perforations. Like this is under review now, this article, and how it is performing. We are trying to analyze such that we can come out with the efficient design of a thermal storage system. So I tried to show just to have some kind of understanding like what are the various works that are going on, and how the melting and the process that takes place inside a storage system. I'm trying to just show you this thing. So as I mentioned before, if you just search in literature, you can find several PCMs. For example, I want to select a PCM for a solar water heating system. I did mention something like 30 to 80 degrees centigrade. So if I try to see, all these things are 30 to 80 degrees centigrade. If you observe, all these things are in that particular range. So now what I will do is, first I will select that particular strength, and after that, I will select that particular thing. Now after that, what I will do is like which one is like having like high latent heat, I will select. Then I will shortlist those PCMs. So after these things, what I do is, among these things, which one is like compatible, which one has like high thermal conductivity, which one has high specific heat, for which one the cost is less, all the things actually I'll be checking. So in this way, what I'll be doing is I'll be going for the selection of the PCM. So first important point is, first I will select, I will shortlist based upon the temperature range, and after that, what I'll be doing is I'll be going with the high latent heat and rest of the properties. So this is one more thing. Generally, these are some thermal approaches like solar collectors. Depending upon the high concentration ratio, we can attain relatively high temperatures. This is a Fresnel type reflector. What we can do is the concentration ratio gets varied between 10 to 40, and we can attain a temperatures depending upon the concentration ratio. We can attain some 60 to 250 degrees also. Sorry. So physically it looks in this particular manner, and this is like a heliostat based system. This is a central receiver. You do have like a helios, that means like small mirrors which are placed in this particular direction. So what happens is you can really even melt metals by using like central receiver system. So because here the concentration ratio is very high, you can even attain something like 2000 degrees C also. So here, by this particular approaches, thermal systems, we can tap this solar energy, and depending upon like what concentration ratio we are maintaining, we can relatively maintain high temperatures. So this is the line diagram which I have given. Especially if you can remember in the previous slides, I did mention that if you are going for relatively high temperatures, salt hydrates can be employed as a thermal energy storage system, latent heat storage systems. So this one is one like where you have like sodium nitrate. Excuse me. So like sodium nitrate and sodium chloride, these are the various salts. Depending upon the temperature range, actually melting point, we need to go for an appropriate selection of the PCM. Okay, so like if you are going for a Fresnel lens, and we need to, based upon the temperatures that we can attain, the melt and depending upon the melting point, appropriate PCM should be selected. And this is one, and out of which like which one has like high latent heat, that should be selected with given top priority. Why? Because more latent heat means then the system becomes very much compact, and obviously thermal conductivity, all other aspects also will come into picture. So in this particular approach, what we can do is we can go for like latent heat storage materials and utilize this thermal energy, like solar energy, such that these greenhouse gases can be reduced. Let me give you like few more examples, especially these phase change materials. Sorry. So generally, if you observe a photovoltaic panel, so what happens is when the solar radiation that is incident on the panel is more, the power output is also more. You can see from this particular figure that the more the solar radiation and the more the power. Okay. So in the same line, if you can observe, these are the things with the increasing like solar radiation, the power output is also increasing. And one more important thing that we have to note down is with the increasing temperature, actually the power output will come down. It is like a two sides of a coin. One side you need to have more radiation, and another side if the temperature is more, the power output will come down. Because what it is observed is nearly for 1 degree centigrade raise in temperature, 2.2 millivolts of voltage will drop down, which finally with further increase in temperatures obviously will lead to decrease in power output. So what we generally do is if you are able to attach these PCMs to this PV panels, people did observe like they are able to regulate the temperature by which the power output can be improved. This is one example that we can have, and it can be kept in terms of like a sachets. As I told before, it is like an encapsulation. These sachets can be placed at different appropriate locations, such as the temperature can be regulated. This is one. Another thing is like even it is used, this latent heat storage materials or like PCMs can be used in several medical applications, heat and cold therapy, as a cold packs as well as like heat packs. So generally, if you observe, normal body temperature will range from 97 degree Fahrenheit to 99 Fahrenheit. There is something called hyperthermia. Hyperthermia refers to a group of heat-related conditions characterized by an abnormally high body temperature. That means when the internal temperature increases. So it is not good, and it is very dangerous also if the body temperature reaches beyond 104 degrees centigrade, which in degrees centigrade will be around like 40 degrees centigrade. So you call this thing as a hyperthermia. When you have this kind of things, what we can do is these PCMs are placed in terms of like packs, and it is placed around our body such that we can control the body temperature. In the same manner, even if it is high also it's more, and even if it is low also, when the body temperature drops down below 35 degrees centigrade or below 95 degree Fahrenheit, we call that thing as a hypothermia. Hypothermia is a medical emergency that occurs when your body loses heat faster than it can produce, causing the dangerously low body temperature. So in this particular case, what we can do is we can have like heat packs. In these heat packs, PCMs are being used. So now there is these PCMs can also be used for transportation of blood. Generally, this is a blood sachets where blood is stored, and if it has to be transported from one location to another location, there are two important issues. One is like temperature, and it should not be a rough. The transportation should be smooth. So suitable temperature for this transportation of blood is around like 1 to 10 degrees centigrade. There is when we are transporting, generally blood undergoes some process called hemolysis. Hemolysis means a rupture or destruction of red blood cells. It can be because of two reasons: because of the rough road, and another thing is because of bad weather. So even if the temperature is more than 30 degrees centigrade or below minus 20 degrees centigrade, this hemolysis occurs, by which the blood will get damaged and it will not be useful for the person like who is in need of it. And for this, what they are doing is PCM based ice packs. They are actually, we do have in the market, and the medium temperature, actually the PCM that we can have is a tetradracane here, and the temperature melting point of this will be around 4.25 5.6 degrees centigrade. So this is like a container where it is totally covered with the PCM inside, such that it can maintain required temperatures for even longer durations. So another important thing is vaccine cold chain. Now this is one of the important aspect, like everyone is looking for, like especially for COVID also, people are eagerly waiting for these vaccines. If you just take most of the vaccines need to be maintained within a temperature range of 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Okay, so but what happens is right from manufacturing part, that means any pharmaceutical unit, if you take from there to the end user, this temperature need to be maintained 2 to 8. If you observe, most of the vaccines like oral polio, injected polio, measles, yellow fever, all the things need to be maintained within a temperature range of 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. The temperature is less than 2 degrees centigrade or even 8 degrees centigrade, the vaccines get damaged. So what should do is like we should be maintaining all the different stages. What should be done is we should be maintaining with a temperature range of 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. So some of the PCMs I tried to give by going through the literature. These are some of the PCMs by which we can, this melting point is around like nearly 5 degrees centigrade, which is very much suitable for this vaccine transportation.
Certain by significant findings. Yeah, the main
so another thing is like regulating room temperature. Even to regulate the room temperature, PCMs are being used. Maybe it can be in terms of like macro encapsulation. Macro in the sense means they have like some cavities with different shapes, or even they are in bricks also. They are trying to mix this PCM. So and what they do is they generally place it in this particular location on the top. So what happens is because of our activities, when the room temperature increases, because of the buoyancy, this hot air will be trying, it will be going up. Okay. And because you select a PCM such that you need to maintain a particular temperature, let us take from 25 degrees centigrade. This PCM can be selected such that its melting point is 25 degrees centigrade. This heated air will be coming in contact with the PCM, which is at 25 degrees centigrade. It melts, and as heat is given from the air to that of PCM, it becomes more cold. That means it becomes more denser, and the denser fluid will try to come down. In this way, what happens is by using PCMs, room temperature also can be regulated. This is another point. And another important application is thermal management of electronics. Like, for example, if you take i7 processor, all the like processors have like operating temperature range and a critical temperature range. So what we want is we want our processors to be maintained within that temperature range. If it is crossing some critical temperature range, that the processors or various electronic equipments get damaged. So what is observed is like this PCMs, if you can observe here, this particular curve without PCM, it is observed that within no time it has reached a very high temperature. But using PCM, it took some certain amount of time and to attain increasing or to attain a required temperature or the increase in temperature. So what we can use like a PCM can be a promising option, especially for thermal management of electronic components also. So another thing is PCM cooling fabric. Actually, these things are being used. So what happens is you have like a jacket where this PCM will be encapsulated PCMs in terms of sachets will be placed inside these jackets. So what happens is let us take a firefighter who is exposed to severely high temperatures. So he will be protected from this radiation, huge radiation, where he is exposed to very high temperatures. First, what happens is this heat will not penetrate to his body. First, it will pass through these PCMs, and because initially it will be in solid state, this melts and it takes the heat. By that time, what happens is like he will be protected from this high temperature radiation. So this is like cooling jackets where it is like you do have this kind of jackets. You can, I tried to browse. It is around like 49.55 euros, and it is available in this particular site. You can even Google it also. You can get these things. So even in refrigerators also it is being used. Generally, we have an evaporator on the top. So like people tried in these refrigerators by placing the PCM in this evaporator section. So usually what happens is when the chilled refrigerant is made to pass through this evaporating coil, this gets solidified. Now assume that the power is off, the power is gone. So now what happens is when we are placing some vegetables or various foodstuff inside, because of the metabolic activity, it starts like there is a heat or temperature gradients inside. So this hot air will be going up and it comes in contact with the PCM. Okay, so now what happens is, now assume that there is no power and this is in solid state because heat is taken from the PCM and is converted to solid state. Now when this hot air is coming in contact with this particular PCM, this takes the heat and it converts to liquid phase. And what happens is, it becomes, as heat is given to the PCM, the air temperature comes down, it becomes more denser and it will try to go down. So in this way, what happens is, even in a refrigerators also, you can regulate the temperature or you can maintain required temperatures for longer duration even if there is no power. So that is why, like these PCMs in advanced refrigerators or even air conditioners, the efficiency is also improved by making use of PCM, maybe in evaporating coil or different locations. So this is PCM cold car. So especially if you want to transport, like especially some food stuff or even like organs, temperature is like very, very crucial. So what happens is, there are most of the problems were faced, especially due to the rising temperatures. So what it was observed is, like a PCM was observed to be a very promising option, especially for transportation of food and even transportation of organs, even blood and so on. So like, especially you can observe here, this cabin on the top and sides, it is totally encapsulated with PCMs. And what it was observed is, even there is a power failure or this power is not able to be given to the VCR system that we have here. For a relatively longer durations, required temperatures was able to maintain. So like what we have seen is, like previously we did see like selection criteria of the PCM, and we did see like what is the like what are the various applications of PCMs that we can have. So among these things, I'll be giving you a glimpse of like what do you mean by congruent melting or phase segregation? What do you mean by thermal stability? What do you mean by compatibility? See, congruent melting in the sense means, like when you heat some PCM, the compounds does not get changed. The composition of these compounds in solid as well as liquid state should be same. If it is not changing, then we call that thing as a congruent melting. If it is changing, then we call that thing as an incongruent melting. So actually, phase segregation or subcooling, I would like to give this explanation in this way. For example, you consider some paraffin wax whose melting point is around 44 degrees C. Now, when you are supplying heat, once it attains 44 degrees centigrade, nearly at this particular temperature, it will be converted to liquid phase. But once you want to retrieve the heat back, the total solidification should actually take place at 44 degrees centigrade, but it will not take place at 44 degrees centigrade. Instead of that, it will take something like 40 degrees centigrade or so. This actually, at this particular temperature, you can observe like different phases. We call that thing also as a subcooling effect. So you can observe, frankly speaking, it should be totally converted into solid or like liquid. But when you observe this phases, either solid and liquid at that particular melting point temperature or even lower or higher, you call this particular aspect as phase segregation. Thermal stability and compatibility. Compatibility means whatever PCM that we are having, it should be compatible with the container materials. I'll explain thermal stability through some slide. This is a compatibility, as I told. Let us take, you have a shell and tube heat exchanger, and in this particular portion, whatever like it is provided as like highlighted as gray, in this particular location, if you are having inside the shell the PCM, and this is nothing but some. Hello, there is a disturbance. Hello. 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 Sorry, there is a huge disturbance.
Participants, kindly mute your mic. So here we are facing some disturbances. Participants are requested to mute their mic. So please continue, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay, sir. Thank you. See, like if you consider a shell and tube heat exchanger, and inside the shell and in between the gap of the tubes and shell, generally we place this PCM. So what happens is like as we go for a number of cycles, that means heat and cool and like supply this hot water and retrieve the heat back by sending cold water. So after a particular duration, what happens is this PCM starts corroding this particular metal tubes. So this particular issue like is called like corrosion. And if it is corroding, we say that thing is this PCM is not compactable with this particular container material. So this is the picture what you can observe. This is a shell and tube heat exchanger, where when the PCM is exposed, we are able to observe both surface corrosion as well as fitting corrosion. Okay, this is what we compact. If you have like a corrosion, something like this, then we say like the PCM is not compatible with this container material. So another thing is like phase segregation. You can observe this is like a hot oil bath where you can maintain required temperatures. What I did is like I kept some PCM of sodium acetate trihydrate, which is a salt hydrate. So which is exposed to like 80 degrees centigrade for around 10 hours. In spite of keeping for 10 hours, you can see certain portion is in liquid state and certain portion is in solid state. So you can clearly observe there is a phase segregation between these two. And what happened is actually when you keep that thing to outside atmosphere, which is at nearly 25 degrees centigrade, or if you are trying to cool, what should happen is everything should be converted to solid phase. But you can observe this sodium acetate trihydrate, you have both the crystals as well as water. It totally did not get solidified. This particular aspect is called actually phase segregation. So this should be avoided. Why? Because if you are having a PCM and it is not totally converting to solid or totally converting to liquid, that means like you are not effectively utilizing the latent heat. And whatever you have designed for, that will not meet your requirement. So this phase segregation also should be avoided. What we are selecting for those PCMs, this phase segregation should not be. And what do you mean by thermal reliability? This experimental setup is actually tailor-made, like we have designed this to understand whether it is thermally stable. Let us see like what do you mean by thermally stable and in what way it is important for us. See, generally if you consider a latent heat storage material based system, what we do is initially during a heating cycle, let us take this particular portion is PCM. Okay, because like the gap between the tube as well as this shell, we are totally filling this PCM. Initially during the heating cycle, we send hot water, this will get liquefied. Now during the cold cycle or retrieving the heat, what we do is we send the cold fluid and we will try to take the heat back. So this is called one cycle. That means charging and discharging becomes one thermal cycle. So like this, what happens is if you continuously go for, because if you take approximately one thermal cycle per day, that means you are utilizing this heat, supplying heat and retrieving the heat, assume one cycle per day, and assume that 300 sunny days, assuming for a given year. So 300 into 5, it comes to be around 1500. So up to 1500 cycles we should check because if you want our system to be good or perform well for at least 5 years, it should be thermally stable. Our PCM should be thermally stable for minimum 5 years, like 1500 thermal cycles. So what we do is this experimental setup will try to see like whether it is thermally stable or not. So what do you mean by thermal stable means? So once you heat cool for so many number of cycles, the melting point, latent heat and other thermophysical properties get changed. So for example, if melting point itself is getting changed and instead of 40, it is coming to be around 48 degrees centigrade. And assume that we have designed our storage system for 40 degrees centigrade and now the melting point is 48, there will not be any utilization of latent heat. So it will not perform at all. Like it will be very, very inefficient. So that is why what we do is this thermal stability also we need to check after going for certain heating and cooling cycles, whether the properties are getting changed or not also we have to see. So that is why these studies are also important. Now I'll briefly give some details about compatibility. So what I did is I tried to go with aluminum, copper and stainless steel because these three metals are most commonly employed metals in industry for thermal energy storage. So I tried to make use of immersion corrosion test. This is a hot bath. So you can see these boiled shoots where I kept these samples, metal specimens, in this particular hot bath, and I waited for nearly 60 days. At different intervals, I tried to see what is the corrosion rate. This method is nothing but immersion corrosion test. So we'll see like at 80 degrees centigrade is kept, and at room temperature also it is kept. What it was observed is copper, the corrosion rate is very high. Aluminium has relatively less corrosion rate, and stainless steel is having like a minimum, almost like insignificant corrosion rate. And at room temperature, if you are keeping, why? Because it is not assured that all the times like a thermal energy storage system will be used. So we may keep it like ideal, or we may disconnect and keep it for some time and utilize it whenever we are in need of. So that is why even carried out experiments at room temperature also. But from room temperature point of view, it is safe. But for at 80 degrees centigrade, copper is observed to have like a severe corrosion when compared to aluminum, and stainless steel is observed to have like insignificant corrosion. So these are some of the SEM images. What is observed is if you are going for aluminum, aluminum is observed to undergo like pitting corrosion. Pitting corrosion means what happens is on this surface, you can find small holes like pits. So this is much more dangerous when compared to that of surface corrosion. Surface corrosion means throughout the surface, the metal will be eaten. But in pitting corrosion, certain portions, small holes will be found, which is not advisable. This is for copper. Copper is observed like the surface, like corrosion rate is high, but relatively more pits are formed for aluminum. And for stainless steel, it is like insignificant corrosion rate was observed. So there is one guidelines which are given based upon the industry. If the corrosion rate is less than 0.2 milligram per centimeter square year, actually you can recommend for a long-term service. And depending upon the range, what happens is whether it is recommended for short term, whether it is recommended for long term, or should not be, it is not recommended for even for short term. Depending upon the corrosion rate, these guidelines are given. Based upon the guidelines, what we can observe is like if you take copper, especially this latent heat cannot be used because this is lauric acid. PW means paraffin wax, sodium acetate trihydrate, myristic acid, palmitic acid, stearic acid. So especially when you are selecting different PCMs in combination with the different containment materials, this aspect also should be taken care. Otherwise, what happens is initially for some duration, like a few days, our heat storage system will work very well. But after some time, what is going to happen is the performance will get deteriorated and it will not meet our requirement. So especially from aluminum also, one should take care that even the corrosion rate is less, but it undergoes pitting where small holes are found, which is much more dangerous also. Why? Because when cold water or like a working fluid is sent to pass through the tubes, this forms the holes and it slowly mixes with the PCM that is outside. So the thermophysical properties of the PCM also gets changed, and the performance deteriorates where it will be of no use for us. So compatibility issues is one. And another thing is like phase segregation is another important aspect. Compatibility, phase segregation, and thermal reliability. Along with these things, actually thermal conductivity is another important aspect, which is like a separate field of study. Generally, to improve this thermal conductivity, people go for like certain enhancement techniques, like using fins, using metal foam, using nanoparticles, and so on. So just to conclude our presentation, due to high latent heat and phase change at nearly constant temperature, latent heat storage materials can be employed in several applications to make the system more compact and efficient. Melting point and latent heat are primary selection criteria for PCMs. Studies pertaining to melting and solidification, compatibility, thermal stability are necessary for long-term utility of PCM-based thermal equipment. Low thermal conductivity of PCM is one of the drawbacks which can be overcome with the usage of certain enhancement techniques like fins, metal foam, nanoparticles, and so on. Studies pertaining to utilities is still scarce in the literature. So actually, because infinite combinations can be done. So we don't know, for example, one organic PCM is good in one way, or if you take other PCM which is good in other aspect, we can try with different combinations like 40, 60, 30, 70, or 10, 90, like that can be tried and it can be seen. So especially works related to utilities is relatively scarce. so that this can be very less work is done and few combinations of materials are available in literature. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. So stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you very much. Now, like the session is open for questions. Like I'll be happy to answer queries.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the excellent presentation. We are very happy to hear from you, sir. May I now request the participants to put forward your queries. So kindly, sir is there to answer you. So if you have any queries, please come over on the line.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Good morning,
Yes.
sir.
Good
This
morning.
is Jitesh, sir.
Okay.
It was very good presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, regarding corrosion resistance, is there any coating techniques available for having very good thermal conductivity? The material
sir.
which is having a very good thermal conductivity, coating technique.
Yeah. Actually, even you can observe in literature, people are trying with the different coatings. But what I try to see is I generally have taken very basic materials like aluminum, copper, and stainless steel. Because generally copper has very high thermal conductivity when compared to aluminum and stainless steel. I tried to see like which one is more corroding in what way. But to your question, actually, I did not work on the coatings part, but from literature point of view, several works are done. So they tried with the different coatings in the same, by making use of immersion corrosion test also. They tried to see whether these coatings are helping in reducing the corrosion. Those kind of studies are also available.
Same time, the coatings will have a higher thermal conductivity, sir.
Yeah, definitely, yes. So whatever coatings we are having, it should not be like a polythene based coating or so where the thermal conductivity is low. Because our aim, especially for this application, should be in such a way, heat should be effectively dissipated. Okay, so for these kind of things, even whatever coating we are taking, definitely those things should have very high thermal conductivity.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more queries from participants, please? Sir, can we have your mail ID on the display, sir, please?
Okay.
So that it will be helpful for the participants for future reference. If they have any clarifications, they can.
So in the chat box, I have typed my email ID. You can please go through it. Or even if you want to contact me also, you can go to NITW website, Mechanical Engineering Department. I'm Jay Krishna. You can have my contact number also over there. You can contact me.
Now
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your reference you have given us. Participants, please make a note of it, and you can make use of it for your queries. So once again, sir, on behalf of Department of Mechanical Engineering, we heartily thank you for sparing your time and sharing your knowledge with us, sir. It was really useful and an excellent presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. So kindly you can take leave, sir.
Fine,
so
thank you. Yeah.
We'll move on to this. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Participants, we are going to move into the second session. So please stay online. So before the second session starts. So we will be starting the second session. Please stay.
Sorry, excuse me, sir. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Sir, kindly once again, please post the feedback link, sir.
Okay.
Because due to network problem, that's why again I joined, but the chat box details are missing, sir.
It is posted, sir. You can see it now.
Okay, fine, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Participants are kindly requested to provide your feedback for the first session, and you're kindly requested to be online. The guest for the second session has arrived, and the second session will be starting soon. Thank you.
Prabhudas sir, Ashwin Sailesh,
Sir. Yes, sir.
Ashwin sir வெயிட் பண்றாங்க, ஆரம்பிக்கலாம்.
Sir.
Prabhudas sir.
The one.
So start பண்ணலாமா சார்?
நீங்க co-host
சண்முக சுந்தர் சார், நீங்க தான் co-host கொடுக்க முடியும் சார். நீங்க தான் host.
ஒரு நிமிஷம் சார், 2 minutes.